Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Michael Quirke, and I want to talk with you today about why is CPTSD recovery a long-term journey? Now, it's an understandable human impulse to look for a quick fix. And our culture certainly seems to promote the idea that we can have a quick fix and we can somehow magically change our lives with no contemplation, no reflection, and no sustained self effort. But I want to tell you something horrible right now. I'm sorry. There are no quick fixes, and band aid solutions only work for very minor injuries. Band-aids have their place, of course, but in fact, our grasping for a quick fix often backfires on us and it leaves us in a much worse condition than the one that we started in. And this is particularly the case when it comes to CPTSD. So let's take a step back here and talk a little bit about what CPTSD actually is. CPTSD stands for complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and it's a variation of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. You've probably heard of that. And it's a condition that arises out of prolonged exposure to often horrific events. A complex trauma survivor may have endured neglect, illness, violence, and more, but usually in a sustained, repetitive way. So, for example, many of my clients faced abuse and neglect as children, and that abuse and neglect was ongoing. And the treatment that they suffered was often at the hands of someone that they depended upon, somebody that they trusted. They were subject to institutional betrayal at schools or at other organizations or within their families. Ultimately, though, they were left as a young person with no way to escape and very few ways to help themselves. As a result, the person who's in the process of recovering from a background like this, a background that's likely or very possible to create CPTSD, is a person who's going to deal with factors and obstacles that are really kind of different than the factors that generate PTSD. While there's no precise ratio that I can talk about, it's pretty safe to say that if your trauma lasted a long time, then your healing is also going to be a longer term process. Why is CPTSD recovery a long term journey? Well, to follow up on what I was just saying, let's consider a physical comparison. If you've developed poor posture habits because you're seated at your desk all day, for example, hooked into a computer monitor, that's something that's going to cause ongoing issues for you. Your muscles are going to get stiffer. They're going to shorten. They're going to atrophy. Some of them will grow weaker. Some of them will stiffen up and get hardened and be chronically pulled. You might develop chronic pain. And you might not even know why that is. You might have no sense about what's going on or where the physical pain is coming from. The discomfort can get so normalized that you actually stop noticing it. If you go to a physical therapist, what they're going to do is they're going to assess you and they're going to be a kind of detective and they're going to try to identify the source. So they might begin with helping you correct your posture if they see that that's an issue that's contributing. And they're also going to help you to address the negative outcomes of the long-term issues that come from being in front of a computer hour after hour, day after day, year after year. Now, both of these things you can accomplish them but they're probably not going to happen overnight. It's going to take some work. It's going to take some prioritization. So there are many people, for example, that put off going to see a physical therapist, or they go, but they're inconsistent with their appointments, or they have trouble practicing and doing the physical therapy homework exercises. That's understandable. We all have a lot on our plate. With CPTSD, here's the deal. You're going to need the help of a qualified psychotherapist, not a generalist, somebody who specifically focuses their work on trauma treatment. Now, when it comes to what you can do to help yourself, self-help is great. You've heard me say in many videos, probably, if you've listened to other ones, that I'm a big fan of self-help. I'm one of those geeky people that thinks it's kind of fun. But I probably wouldn't be a therapist if I didn't think that. But here's the thing about self-help. It is not sufficient. It's not, you're not going to recover through self-help methods alone, probably, right? I'm speaking generally here because I'm a therapist. I'm not your therapist. I don't know you. So I can only speak generally. Self-help is great. It's usually not sufficient. It's often counterproductive or harmful. I see that in my practice every single day. Now, a trauma-informed practitioner is someone who's going to work with you to help to assess the past events, the past circumstances that led to your present situation. Your therapist needs to take an extensive history from you in order to come up with a roadmap, but also to help you grasp how intense the trauma was and how long it lasted for you. Now, this is important because I work with a lot of CPTSD clients, a lot of people who have survived early developmental trauma, early adverse experiences. And here's the thing, it's just the norm that those men and women tend to distort their past. They ignore, they minimize, and they justify the ways that they were treated and its effect on them. One of the saddest things that I hear, again, all the time, maybe almost every single person that comes into work with me says that sorry if it gets to me, they didn't know that their life was so different until they went away to college, or they went away to summer camp, or they stayed for a summer at a cousin's house, and they saw what it was like to be in a safe, supportive, kind environment with responsible, caring adults around them. So these are the kinds of factors that are going to have a lot of influence on the length of your healing journey. When you get on that journey, you're going to work with your therapist to ease your symptoms. And most importantly, you're going to undergo treatment, guidance that's going to empower you to both process and resolve the complex trauma, to put to rest in a healthy way and resolve those old feelings that are stuck. Since complex trauma negatively impacts your ability to trust other people and to trust yourself, this is not going to happen overnight. This is a process of growth that takes a while. Here are a few things I want you to consider doing during your CPTSD recovery. Now, besides the intensity and the duration of the complex trauma, the following elements are important factors in your recovery plan. And I've got some contemplation questions for you to think about, to consider, so that you know what the roadmap is when you embark on your recovery journey. First of all, I want you to think, How old were you when your trauma began? Were there any other mental health conditions present for you as a younger person and the people around you? What was their mental health and their physical health like? What's your own personal history of resilience and recovery? Do you tend to be a strong person that bounces back? Do you tend to have trouble with that? If things really, if something bad, if you hit a roadblock, does it tend to just stop you or really knock you down? What's your personality like when it's come to resilience? I also want you to think about your current life and ask yourself, do you have a healthy support system in place? Because that's going to make a big difference. If you've got support and psychological intimacy and psychological and emotional safety in your life, then you're probably going to move along at a good clip. If you don't, and you've got more difficult relationships, more frightening and upsetting relationships, more difficult people in your life, more difficult circumstances, that's going to slow everything down. Now, here's an important point. I want you to think about the foundations of your life. Um, and when I talk about the foundations, here's what I mean. I mean, what type of lifestyle are you currently living? Are you eating well? Are you exercising or not? Do you sleep well? Do you not sleep at all? You stay up all night because you don't pay attention to your sleep hygiene or you have sleep problems. Is your diet terrible? Do you exercise regularly to help yourself feel physically okay? Are you using drugs and alcohol with any kind of regularity? Are you taking lots of psychiatric drugs? Are you eating tons of junk food? All of these things are going to affect how your brain and your nervous system learn and grow. It's also important to think about how open you are and how much you know about different therapeutic approaches, because you want to find approaches that match your needs and your personality. Here's the reality. So, for example, in my practice, I work quite differently with different clients, and there's a reason for that. The reason is because, well, like they say, all roads lead to Rome, or we can choose another metaphor. There's a lot of ways up a mountain. But the truth is, not every route appeals to everybody. And some of us are just flat out closed to certain approaches. We've got our own beliefs, our own biases, our own tendencies, and we're closed. We've got, um, we've just decided that a certain approach is not for us. And, we head in another direction. And that can be fine. But it's important to think about what you're open to and why, and what you know and what you don't know, because those are all things that you want to talk with your therapist about, right? It's the clients that seek genuine education and information that tend to do the best. That's what I have noticed over the last quarter of a century. So ask yourself, are you open to more holistic practices, things like meditation, mindfulness practice, yoga, art therapy, or not? Um, are you looking for a very traditional form of therapy? Um, just, think about what you're open for and learn about what's available in terms of treating CPTSD. So from there, CPTSD recovery is typically going to follow some time proven stages. And, I've talked about this in other videos, and here's why I do this, because in any industry, the practice of it varies very widely, right? Take restaurants. There's a wide variety of quality of and types of food that's available in the restaurant industry. The same thing is true in mental health care, right? We have what's considered a standard of care, but that doesn't mean that many, most, or by all means, all practitioners follow the standard of care. And that's why I'm about to talk with you about the stages of CPTSD recovery. The first one, to put it simply, in the first stage of effective CPTSD recovery, your work is going to be focused on generating feelings of stability. You're going to learn how to work with your own nervous system to help yourself get regulated. Complex trauma can and usually does disrupt our felt sense of stability and security. So we feel unsafe or perhaps very disconnected from ourselves and other people and our lives. But we fundamentally feel secure, meaning not secure. Hence, a giant first step is to acknowledge this reality and then go about addressing it. As you learn healthy coping mechanisms, you can build the foundation that I'm talking about. And that is the foundation for healing and growth. So, continuing to talk about the standard of care, then we move on to what I call stage two. That's processing. And, that's what many people think about when they think of therapy in general or trauma therapy in particular, processing and resolving old feelings that are stuck in place. Unless these feelings are effectively processed, trauma memories are going to keep you stuck in a very negative cycle. There are many proven options for making this happen, and how long the processing takes depends on some of the factors that I've experienced before, including your motivation, your ability, your circumstances, and the education, training, and specialization of the therapist that you're working with. Those are all key factors. The third stage is often referred to as reconnection or integration. And the idea here is not to erase uncomfortable thoughts, not to avoid or squash out old, difficult, painful memories. Rather, you want to reach a point at which you can actually think about, you can contemplate and reflect on your past without being triggered, without being hijacked by those threat responses of fight, flight, freeze, and submit. When you're in such a state, you're much better to integrate your history with your present, right, and to distinguish the two. What's an echo of the past versus what's actually in front of you right now. And this is what's going to allow you to move forward into your richer, healthier life. Now, I want to make some clarifications. Everything that I've said here, it's meant to be empowering for you, to give you information so that you can meet your goals. I do not mean this to be daunting or to serve as a deterrent to your getting treatment. What I want is you to make a wise, informed decision so that you can get where you want to go. Everyone's recovery process is somewhat different, but with CPTSD, there are some known themes. There are some patterns that we know about, and it's a self-loving choice to understand the process that you're thinking about embarking upon, right? Because then you can prioritize it. You can get a thorough, effective treatment. It's good to know that we have a roadmap for effective recovery. And I like to put that out there because for some reason, and I mean, honestly, I could make hours of videos about this because I have lots of theories about why this is. But there's this widespread belief. I can certainly say this in the Bay Area. I hear over and over and over, people don't think, they don't know, they don't believe that they can get better. And that's because their practitioners tell them this. They say, you're always going to be fighting your depression. You're always going to be struggling with PTSD. You're always going to be battling your anxiety disorder. And I'll tell you, that is not what I see or what I've ever seen in my work. It's true of a certain number of people, right? When the conditions are not favorable. But generally, that's not true. People do recover. They do get better when they prioritize it, when they make the effort and they know what to do and how to do it, and when they have effective treatment. So, from this starting point, when all these things are in place, you're going to be well positioned to heal and thrive. All right. I've said a lot today. I want to invite you, if you found anything I've said to be helpful, I hope that you have. But if you have, feel free to pass this video on, share, like, subscribe it. Have a look around my YouTube channel. I'm regularly producing content. I'm also regularly producing content on my blog, which is www.michaelgquirke.com. Also, please feel free to comment. I love hearing from people. Some of the best questions and ideas I get are from my clients and from you guys out there. So don't hesitate. Thanks so much for your time and attention, and see you soon, I hope.